Well, the polls open at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. By 10 o'clock they close, but within a couple of hours we should have an indication of the result. According to the bookmakers and according to my political nose, honed over 50 years in active frontline politics, short sword fighting in the cause of justice, I'd say we are going to win. Moreover, that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, the two big parties of the state, are going to be utterly humiliated at the polls. Of course, they're still the two contenders for power in Britain, but that's because no one with the credibility to win, the expectation that they might win, ever stands against them. But that is about to change. There will be many consequences if I'm elected here in Rochdale tomorrow. One of them will be a knocking of the knees at Westminster amongst the establishment politicians in the ironclad consensus for war on both sides of the parliamentary aisle. The Uniparty, the two cheeks of the same backside, they are going to be clenching those two cheeks rather nervously as I come through those swing doors. But more importantly than that, it will be a spark that will set very dry tinder alight all over this region of the northwest of England, through the Midlands, in particular the West Midlands, particularly the city of Birmingham. It will spread in East London from Ilford all the way to Bethnal Green and Bow. It will put Labour on notice that they have lost, maybe forever, the support which generations of voters gave them, whose mothers and fathers always voted Labour, whose grandmothers and grandfathers always voted Labour. Starmer has burnt it all. He's blown it. He will never be trusted. There's never a glad, confident morning again for Keir Starmer outside of the Guardian reading Liberal bubble. Labour is hated. Sure, if it's a choice between Labour and the Conservatives, many, but by no means as many as it used to be, will vote Labour rather than Conservative. But when it is not a straight fight between those two, when there are credible independent candidates, as there are going to be, when there are credible Workers' Party candidates, as there are going to be, then all over the country they'll look to what happened in Rochdale tomorrow, the 29th of February, a leap year. They'll see it as a great leap forward. We are in the business here in this town, 20 minutes from the metropolis of Manchester, of leading a Rochdale revival. In 1844, 180 years ago, the cooperative movement was born in a tiny lane called Toad Lane. You need to visit it. I hope many people will come and visit me in Rochdale over these next 5 years that I hope to represent the town. I've been in cooperatives, in the favelas in Brazil, in the townships of South Africa, all over the world. There are cooperatives, and it all started here. The people who started it are known as the Rochdale Pioneers, and we intend that this town should forever be associated both with them and the pioneers that returned the working class people of this country to a path that can lead to their salvation. Labour is done, finished, defunct, just like the Liberals were more than 100 years ago, when the working class decided that the Liberals no longer represented their interests and that they needed a party to represent them and their interests, entire and separate from the bourgeois interests that the Liberal Party then tried to straddle. The pioneers will never be forgotten of 1844, the pioneers that will be out in their thousands tomorrow voting for a new direction for working class people in Britain, I hope will never be forgotten either. But we'll tell you more and all about it on Sunday on the show at 7 p.m. UK time. I saw a picture, a video of Joe Biden licking ice cream in an ice creamier, declaring that there's going to be a ceasefire in Gaza on Monday. There he is on your screen. Leave aside the crass, grotesque idea of a president eating ice cream whilst talking about a ceasefire in a conflict that has already cost the blood and lives of well over 100,000 people in 135 days. Leave that optic aside. He was lying. He was lying to fool the voters in Michigan that some end was in sight for the torture, the crucifixion of the Palestinian people in the Holy Land. It was a lie, a self-serving lie, but it didn't stop 104,000 people not staying at home. Hundreds of thousands more stayed at home, but 104,000 went to the ballot box and wrote their X on the box marked uncommitted. What does it mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means that Joe Biden now cannot win the state of Michigan, and no Democratic presidential candidate can possibly win a presidential election when they don't win Michigan. Look it up and tell me if I am wrong. The reason is that the people of Michigan's settled will is like the settled will of millions of Americans, that this Holocaust, with a small h, but a Holocaust nonetheless, that has taken place over these last 4 months, is entirely the responsibility of Joe Biden's ironclad alliance with the killer, the baby killer, Benjamin Netanyahu. Sure, he briefs from time to time that he's angry with Netanyahu, that Netanyahu is an a-hole, that Netanyahu doesn't listen. Joe Biden, with one telephone call, could have stopped this 100,000 lives ago. He could have stopped it with one call. If he told Netanyahu, not another dollar, not another bomb, not another rocket, not another veto in the United Nations Security Council, you'll be boycotted, sanctioned, disinvested, cast into the perdition that apartheid South Africa was cast, then the thousands, scores of thousands of little children and their mothers who have been slaughtered could have been averted. This is the Joe Biden that claims he's pro-life. This is the Joe Biden that claims he's a practicing Roman Catholic. This is the Joe Biden that claims he's a Christian. Yet he has facilitated a slaughter of the innocents of which Herod himself would be ashamed. I don't know how much longer Joe Biden has this mortal coil. I don't know how much longer any of us have on this earth in this life. But I'm willing to bet that Biden will burn in hell, in the hottest fires of hell, for his role in burning all these children, burning all these mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. I damn him. God damn him. I say, lesser of two evils, you're having a laugh. This man is Satan himself, walking around, doddering around, staggering around, losing his way, even on the way to the bathroom in the White House itself. I despise Joe Biden for the same reason that Malcolm X, whose 59th death anniversary we marked just a couple of days ago, when Malcolm described the difference between the wolf and the fox. Let's call the wolf the Republican Party. Let's call the fox the Democratic Party. In the UK, Tory and Labour. When the wolf is coming towards you, you know exactly what's in his mind and what his intentions are. But the fox comes amongst you looking as if it's smiling, but its purpose is exactly the same. That's why I despise Starmer more than little Sunak, the inky-fingered clerk of empire, who once upon a time would have been doing the numbers for the empire in East Africa or a part of the empire, maybe far distant. This little runt, Sunak, he'll be gone soon. We all know who he represents, what his interests are. The problem is Starmer is the fox. Biden is the fox, pretending to be on the side of the working people, pretend of all the things they claimed that Donald Trump would have done. Joe Biden has done them all and much more than Trump would have done, but smiling like a fox all the while. The situation this week in Gaza is simply catastrophic. The numbers of people still being slaughtered every day by rocket and shell is in the hundreds every week, massacred. I had a journalist in here 5 minutes ago. I can just imagine what he's going to write in the paper tomorrow, challenging me when I said that what's happening in Gaza is a Holocaust with a small h. Really? You think it's a Holocaust? You're comparing it to a Holocaust? I'll tell you this, Israel has killed more children more quickly than even the beasts of fascism killed in the Holocaust. Do the maths. The rate of killing of children in this 135 days is worse than the Holocaust with a capital H. And it's the fact that none of our journalists, none of our politicians have even begun to contemplate that. That is the reason for the horror that they keep expressing at the hundreds of thousands, millions out on the street. Most of them not Muslims. Most of them white British people. Many of them Jews on the streets of this country every night, every weekend, protesting this Holocaust, this massacre, this genocide of the innocents that is taking place in Gaza. Of course, I could say a lot, but it wouldn't be diplomatic of me to say it about the Arab countries and the pitiable, pitiful, pusillanimous, pathetic response of the Arab governments to this challenge to their own people, their own Arab nation, this challenge to their own co-religionists, the people who pray like them, fast like them, worship the same God as them, from the same book as them. They haven't lifted one finger to stop it. Haven't lifted one finger to come to the aid of the Palestinian people in their agony, on their Calvary, on the cross in the Holy Land. But there are different circles of hell. The hottest must be reserved for the dictatorship of General Sisi in Egypt. It was not my intention to focus on him for a variety of geopolitical reasons. But when I saw him sending aeroplanes from his own territory into Gaza, which is a distance of 50 yards, and dropping aid on a parachute into the sea, and when I saw thousands of refugees wading out into the waves to try and recover it, I couldn't help but remember from my many times going through it that there is a perfectly serviceable door, gate, that he could just have opened and allowed the thousands of trucks full of aid, full of food, to drive through the gate rather than wade into the Mediterranean in order to recover a tiny amount of the urgently needed aid, for the lack of which people are dying. And dropping it in the south of Gaza doesn't help the people who are literally starving to death in the north of Gaza, that are falling down in front of our eyes and dying of hunger, whilst enough food to feed them all is on the road through that gate in Egyptian territory. People say to me, well, what can Sisi do? What can Egypt do? I put it a different way. What would Israel do if you opened the gates and started bringing food and medicine into the Gaza Strip? Would they attack you? That wouldn't be a good look. And they didn't shoot down your plane with your parachute drop, did they? It's time to step up the response before the Palestinians begin dying in their hundreds of thousands of famine, pestilence, disease. There's no time to lose. There's no time for diplomatic nicety any longer. Let Russia, China, South Africa, Brazil, let them send ships now to the coast. What's Israel going to do? Practically friendless in the world as it now is, sink a Chinese aid ship? I don't think so. But even if it did, it's time to step up our rejection of genocide. The International Court of Justice has already found Israel plausibly guilty of acts of genocide. That's what a Holocaust is, by the way, a genocide. A country on trial for genocide continues to enjoy the political, military, intelligence, diplomatic, and above all, propaganda support of a tiny number of Western countries that unfortunately most of you are living in. We've got Chris Hedges coming up next. You think I spoke powerfully? Wait till you hear him. Chris Hedges. Stay tuned.